we've seen that Google takes away controls, takes away settings, takes away insights, and it's become even more important to kind of think about like how can we influence the campaigns besides what you can do in the Google Ads account.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of What's Working in E-commerce. I'm your host, Eagan Heath. I'm the owner of Caravan Digital. We're a direct-to-consumer e-commerce digital marketing agency. Today, I'm speaking with a fellow PPC guy. We have Dennis Moons from Store Growers. Dennis, welcome.
Hey, Eagan. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. You know, there's a lot going on in this world. We were chatting before, and actually my team and I have taken your Google Shopping course, and it's excellent. So glad we could connect that way. And then we met through the Dynamite Circle afterward. There's a lot going on in the Google Ads world. Give us the lay of the land. There's a lot going on with Performance Max. How do you think about, kind of what's changing here with Google Ads lately?
Yeah, so you're right. There's been a lot of things changing in the last, I would say, like few years. Google has been really making a lot of big changes to its platform and the way different campaigns work. And so, yeah, if we go back like a few years, we saw that the smart shopping came out. And smart shopping was really a more automated way inside of Google Ads of running shopping ads, where Google basically would decide where to show your ads. It could show it in a couple of different places. You didn't really have much control over the search queries or where your ads showed or how much you paid. And a lot of people, including me, were very, very resistant against that trend, because like in the past few years, Google has been on this path of taking away control of advertisers and kind of deciding, telling us like, oh, we know better. We have much more data. We see many more accounts. So we can optimize your budget and show it to the right people much better than you. And at first, I wanted full control over every part of my Google Ads campaigns. And so when smart shopping happened, I kind of resisted it for a long time. And sort of towards the end, I saw some use cases of where actually in some cases it could work. But then Google announced that they were sunsetting smart shopping and replacing that with Performance Max. So that's about 2 years ago, they announced Performance Max, and then last year, I think in September, they kind of sunsetted the smart shopping. So they moved everything over. And that was, I have to say, it was like a shock, because similar to how Google Analytics is, or Universal Analytics is ending, and Google has been like warning everyone about it. Like people knew it was coming, but still it was like a bit of a shock. So a lot of people were dealing with how to use Performance Max. And I think one of the key points, or one of the key mistakes that I saw with a lot of advertisers, is that Google was migrating everyone into this Performance Max, and people had the impression that that was the only way to run campaigns. But of course, that's not the case. There's many other campaign types that are also suited to run campaigns. So at first, when that came out, I was also skeptical. I'm always skeptical when Google announces new things, because they make it seem like it's for the advertiser. But then when you use it, there's a lot of side notes and a lot of things that aren't ideal for most advertisers. So yeah, we had right now we've had about a year and a half of doing a lot of testing with Performance Max, and I have to say it's good in some cases, and we definitely use it in our accounts as well. And we see we're still running a lot of experiments, but it's not for all advertisers. I think that's the important part to know, like on a high level, basically.
Yeah, and some of what we've talked about on this show previously, I've had Joshua Whalen from Little Wolf Digital. I've had other folks on too talking Google Shopping. With Performance Max, one is just we're not just in search anymore, as my understanding. It's going to show search, shopping, display, YouTube, Gmail. It's going to show everywhere. It's going to show branded and non-branded, unless we specifically say don't show the branded keywords. And then we're kind of hitting top of funnel and bottom of funnel in terms of could be remarketing mixed in there, things like that. So I'm curious, when do you think this is the right kind of campaign to use, and when are you seeing, hey, this is not the right way to go for clients?
Yeah. So Google is saying that this is the ideal campaign for small advertisers. That's how they like to sell it, right? So it's instead of worrying about the complexity of managing a display campaign and a search campaign and a shopping campaign and a video or YouTube campaign, you can just like use Performance Max and we will allocate your budget to all of these channels. Well, in my experience, it's exactly these clients that don't get good results. Simply because if they have a small budget, Google will be spreading the budget very thinly on all those channels. And you will get like a little bit of results like here and there, but overall, there won't be enough data to kind of get you the results that you need. And this is really the most important thing. The cases where I do see Performance Max working is it's in the case of big brands that have like big budgets, but more importantly, that see a lot of conversions coming in. It's campaigns that are doing like 50, 100 conversions a month, where the algorithm can kind of decide or find clients in all those different places. So when we're talking about like who is this for, I would say if you're a smaller brand, you probably want to still keep the control, because it will be just too hard even for Google with all the data to kind of like optimize it in an automated way. That said, there also are, it is in fact like more complex, right? Performance Max, because of all those different channels. Google is kind of like allocating a little bit of a budget in each channel. They're testing the visitors or the people that they show the ads to. They're also wildly different, right? Somebody searching on shopping for a product, compare that to someone on YouTube waiting for another video to start. Like, you're gonna target them from the same campaign. So in theory, it sounds nice that you can have like top of the funnel and people that are like might be interested in your product, and then combine it with the shopping. But in reality, I do not see this dynamic play out. So I would say smaller advertisers definitely keeping more control is still a little better, and bigger advertisers, they have the opportunity to, or they have the possibility maybe to run Performance Max, but it's not a must, I would say.
Yeah, that's interesting to think about. Where did this come from? You were talking about kind of smart shopping, of this was for smaller sellers. This was supposed to simplify things for them, but really that's not who this is best for. Performance Max can drive the best results when you have a lot of data. I assume there's AI on the back end in terms of finding those buyers and things like that, kind of like we see in meta ads. The more data you can feed Google, the better the performance you can see. So that's pretty interesting. Are there things you're going in and changing? Are you contacting Google? Are you putting in branded keywords as negatives? Are there any kind of tricky levers you're pulling? I know Jack on my team will kind of look at audiences and try to find backdoor ways to make it this a remarketing campaign or a not remarketing campaign. Like you said, it's all kind of mixed up in the soup of, we've got impressions that are totally top of funnel versus bottom of funnel all together. Are there changes you're going in and making to try to control Performance Max a little better?
Yeah, so good question. There definitely are like a ton of things and tweaks you can make to kind of steer the campaign more to where you want it to go. And you also mentioned the topic of like excluding brand or not excluding it. I've gone back and forth, and I've run tests excluding the brand and not excluding the brand. And one of the things when you start, or when you have a client and they're running a Performance Max campaign, especially in the beginning, you will see it go towards the places where it's easiest for them to get a sale, right? So that's branded search, if you haven't excluded it, and other like branded keywords. But I've found that over time, this is how the campaign gets started, but over time, this will actually change. So at first, like in the first, let's say, few weeks, maybe the first month, you will see it over indexing on brand. But then if the campaigns are big enough, if the budget is big enough, Google will start looking in different places as well. So I've seen actually good results from not excluding the brand, and then like taking the hit on like a branded search campaign that we have running for a little bit, or like a branded shopping campaign, and then actually waiting it out and then seeing the campaign actually find new sales for more generic terms that where it would take more time to kind of let the campaign settle. And this is scary as well, right? Because these are usually your best campaigns, and you're turning on another campaign and it's cannibalizing it, and it's mixing in a lot of other traffic. But that's one of the things that I've seen. Another example of that is running feed only Performance Max campaigns. So if you follow the kind of like the setup on how Google recommends you to create your campaigns, by default they will ask you to add images, they will ask you to add like headlines and description text, and that will immediately set you up to show like on the display network, on search, etc. But there's actually a way to just link your product feed to your campaign or to an asset group, and that makes sure that most of your budget is actually spent on, for example, shopping. And the great thing about this running like a feed only Performance Max campaign is, compared to running a standard shopping campaign, is that this Performance Max campaign will also take care of remarketing. So you actually have you're doing both, and it's something that takes a little bit of a shift, as you mentioned. Like you don't have like a good view on where the budget is being allocated, right? There's also ways to do that, but in its most simplest way, like this is Google deciding where to what portion of your budget to allocate to remarketing or not. But it's I found it like lately that it performs better than having like a standard shopping and then a dynamic remarketing campaign, because I found that in the past few months this has actually like dropped a little bit in performance. So it's also seeing these shifts from what used to work in individual campaigns, and also keeping a close eye on what's changing, because it's changing really, really fast. Not just what Google is announcing, but also how things are working. So, yeah.
You mentioned kind of the breakdown and maybe some opacity there. We can't even see what the breakdown is. When we run ads for clients on Meta ads, I can do a breakdown of which ones were Facebook feed, which ones were Instagram feed, which ones were Instagram stories. Are you seeing something in your account where you can see this much went to search, this much went to display, this much went to shopping? Jack and I were looking at this, and I didn't see it earlier, but maybe some accounts have that.
Yeah, so there actually isn't Google doesn't give you a clear cut like breakdown. It's a hacky sort of way that you kind of have to get to it. So they will show you the portion of your clicks. Like if you go into the listing groups, so like the product groups basically, and you can actually see how much money is being spent out of, let's say you've spent like in the past month, you spent like $1,000 on Performance Max. You can see that out of that $1,000, maybe 600 was spent on the products in the listing group. So you know that the shopping and remarketing portion have actually spent like 60% of your budget. Then there's another way to kind of look at the portion of video. And then there's also a few different ways to kind of see the other breakdown. So there's a really great script by Mike Rhodes. He's an Australian PPC expert, and they have an amazing script which you plug into your account, and it will give you all sorts of insights of Performance Max, of your different campaigns, of things that are available in the Google Ads API, but not necessarily in the interface. So it's very interesting to kind of run this for campaigns, especially when you're making changes because it's so hard to kind of understand, like if you make a change, what's the impact, right? There's only like did we make more sales or not? But you can't look at something like the click-through rate, because it doesn't make sense. What is the click-through rate if you're combining display with YouTube and shopping? So keeping that breakdown in mind and closely looking at it. So let's say we have a campaign spending $100 a day, and we bring that up to 150. Well, that split is going to change, because at some point you're going to have exhausted, let's say, the available shopping queries, and it's just going to start spending on YouTube or display or something. So it's also good to keep that check in mind, to just see like, okay, where is the campaign spending money, and does this make sense?
So Dennis, I know you mentioned, we could kind of dig in and back into where are PMAX ads showing. You kind of have a way to show us inside the account. It's not totally transparent on this many search, this many display, this many shopping, but you have kind of ways to back into that. Can you show us that and talk through it?
Yeah, sure. So when you're in your account and you're just looking at the overview of your campaign, you will see like an overall cost. So in this case, for this campaign, it's 479 euros. So there's no real report that shows that breakdown, but you can kind of find out like how much is spent on shopping and how much is spent on video. And then for the search and the display, that's a different game. But for shopping, you can like kind of find it out. So if you go you select your account and you then go to listing groups, this will give you the performance for all of your different, basically for your shopping ads. So if we then,
you could get spend data here in terms of how many clicks, what was cost per click, basically, and we know these ones is what you're showing. These would have been shopping impressions and clicks. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. So this is shopping, and this is also dynamic remarketing. It's every time a product is pulled from your product feed, right? So it kind of it's a little bit mixed of display, right? So dynamic remarketing sometimes also is display, but I kind of feel comfortable to just put this under shopping ads. And you can see here in total it had like a cost of 355, right? So out of the budget of like 480, 355 was spent here, and then that means that there was which was 120 spent elsewhere. So when we go back to the campaigns overview, the way to kind of see the portion of video in there is if you go into columns, you can actually add like a few columns that are related to video, and that's views, and that's also average cost per view. So if we add these two in,
you could see your views and your cost per view and kind of figure out how much did we spend on YouTube then.
Yeah, exactly. So here, like this campaign got 0 views, and this campaign also, there's no cost per view. So actually no money was spent. So that means that about is spent elsewhere. So that could be search, that could be display. I would say that for this campaign, I'm pretty confident that it is most is spent on search and not display. But again, as I said before, there's a script which will give you like also an estimate, but a better breakdown of exactly where all the money is going, and it also presents it in one single chart. While here, right, you kind of have to check a little bit here, check a little bit there. It's again like a hacky way to see how your money is being spent.
That's great. We'd love to link to that script as well. And then do you look at the asset groups or the assets to kind of get a sense on are display assets showing as display ads, or does that mix in with that remarketing you talked about?
Yeah, so as part of like the different assets, it's very difficult. So or it's like a campaign without assets, right? And we're just running feed only, or it's very difficult to get like insights from Performance Max on like which asset is performing best, because similar to responsive search ads, Google is giving like a very broad rating, right? They're not giving you, oh, this asset is getting this click-through rate, or this asset is getting this click-through rate. They're telling you like, oh, it's good, it's average. Or in most cases, they're saying like, oh, we don't have like any available data for this asset. So it's hard to do like optimization inside of Performance Max. So one thing that we do is kind of still run a lot of search campaigns and make sure that the things that are working in our search campaigns, the headline testing that we're doing there, that we're also bringing those learnings into Performance Max and use Performance Max as kind of like our best guess for good headlines, for good description text, for good assets, but actually try to use other campaigns to kind of really test them.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for showing this, Dennis.
Yeah, sure.
I'm a little beside myself that hacky workarounds are required to get transparency for advertisers who are paying for the ads. It's like they're
Yeah.
buying this, but I think it goes to show what market power Google has and these tech giants, where it's like, I don't care. They're the big boats, and we're these little tugboats at best. And so there's not a lot of market power for these participants. So I'm absolutely beside myself that they're just making this move. My feeling is they had a bunch of junk inventory they couldn't move, and now they're mixing it in with everything else. Like it's really for them. You know, like you said, they say it's in the name of performance, and for advertisers, sometimes you see better performance, oftentimes you don't. And if it's mixed in with branded and remarketing and all these different channels, it's quite messy. So I appreciate the ones you called out, and you can kind of see, you know, your product groups, how many impressions and clicks those are getting. There's just kind of ways to back into video as well. And then, I would love to link to that resource you mentioned with the scripts, but I'm just absolutely beside myself that we have to do this. It's just not even included in the platform. So I'm just, wow. I know you have a very helpful checklist. So when I go to storegrowers.com, say goodbye to unprofitable Google Ads campaigns, you can download your free Google Ads profit checklist. Is there something you can show us or say about that? I know you've been doing this for many years, and so you really know kind of what needs to be in place for, you know, advertisers to succeed here.
Yeah, so I have like a checklist that we kind of follow that I could pull up, and it kind of walks you through like when setting up a Performance Max campaign. There's all sorts of like pitfalls and decisions that you need to make. And as we said, like so much of Performance Max is like automated, and you don't there's no real transparency. So it's much more important to kind of understand really like what you're doing and decisions that you are making to ensure that you have a chance of making this campaign type work, right? So I can share my screen here. And like walking through this checklist, it also helps you see see how Performance Max plays into your overall account. Because running a Performance Max campaign, it's very impactful, right? We mentioned this before. If you turn it on, it might impact your branded search. It might impact standard shopping campaigns that you're running, dynamic remarketing campaigns. So you really want to think about like how this is impacted. So maybe you run a Performance Max campaign only on a subcategory or on a category of all of your products to see the impact, to see how it works. And yeah, so that's kind of the first thing. Another thing that's important, that a lot of us advertisers that come from a world where we have a lot of control over our campaigns, is also we want to allocate a certain budget to a certain campaign, right? But in Performance Max, I've touched on it before, there is really a necessary number of conversions, right? So Google puts it anywhere between like 20 to 50 conversions that you want to have, but the more is better. So in standard shopping, we used to be able to slice and dice our campaigns how we wanted, right? We could have like a lot of different campaigns, maybe one for each category. In Performance Max, that doesn't always make sense, because you really see that once you get to a campaign that's only bringing in, let's say, 5 sales a month, that's really not enough to get the most from how the campaign type works. Also here, as I mentioned, should you simplify Performance Max and limit it to fewer channels, running things like a feed-only campaign? I think it's important. A second important part when it comes to organizing your campaign is thinking about how to organize the different asset groups. So when Google launched the Performance Max campaigns, they weren't even giving us the performance of the asset groups. So luckily, this has changed in the last few months, and now we can see like the difference in the amount of clicks, the click-through rate, and stuff, all within the interface. So that helps to kind of decide on a best approach, right? Do you use the asset groups for your subcategories? Do you use it more for teams, for example, like jogging pants for men? Or do you use like your asset groups with different audience signals, right? So there's a bunch of other things. I think an important one might be here, like I mentioned the part where things could go wrong. I think these are important. Conversion goals, this is true for every campaign. You just want to make sure that you only opt into the conversion focused goals, right? Customer acquisition. So this is a pretty advanced topic. And we mentioned this before, that in Performance Max, you have the ability to, or Performance Max by default does prospecting, does remarketing, kind of mixed together. This customer acquisition feature, it actually allows you to take a little bit more control over that, but it is a pretty advanced feature. So if you're just starting out, I would suggest just to ignore this, but know that this is a feature that when used correctly, you can have like much more control over, is it new customers that you're going after, or are you just mixing the two? Yeah, and another important one here is the final URL expansion. So this means that Google can find like other URLs on your website to kind of to use in their ad. So these often are pages that you didn't intend Google to use. So sometimes that can work out well. Sometimes that can also backfire a little bit, and you can have like things like your blog or something included in your campaigns, which is far from ideal. Like if you go through like the checklist, we'll have it linked in the show notes. You'll find more things of more important pieces to kind of pay attention to make sure that you get it right.
That's great. Thank you, Dennis. Yeah, definitely recommend this. And there's some great courses on the site as well. I see the Google Shopping Success. We've taken that in my agency and we love it. I see you one for PPC wins, Performance Max Impact. That's great. Was there a case study you wanted to talk through, Dennis?
So yeah, there is like, we have, so as I mentioned, Performance Max, this is still even though it's been out for 2 years, I would say the opinions within the PPC community are still very much divided. We have people saying, still stay away from it. Like there's no case where it makes sense. Other people are like, no, this is the way forward, and we're going to go like all in and just do everything there. I kind of like, I try to stick to what works, and to understand what works, you have to run experiments and test what is working. So one of the ways that we do that is we have a community where we get together with other PPC managers basically, and we share like what's working and what's not working. So similar to the name of this podcast, what's working in e-commerce, we try to find out like what's working in the world of Google Ads. And let me pull up one recent case study that we actually did. So the goal here of our experiment was to kind of see like, how can we influence Performance Max? So explaining this goes like very much into the weeds of Performance Max, but it's kind of, if you leave Performance Max running as it is, you give Google total control over of how it allocates the budget. But we found, or the experiments that we've been running, is if we run other campaigns we call driver campaigns, can we actually influence Performance Max? So imagine that we have a Performance Max campaign with with 5 products, and then we have, let's say, a search campaign or a standard shopping campaign or a YouTube campaign that's also focused on these products. Can we use this Performance Max campaign can we use the other campaigns to drive traffic? And then can we leverage the Performance Max campaign to play more the role of retargeting? And it's showing some promising results, but there's been like many experiments that we've done, and there's no clear winner yet. But I just wanted to show you that this is one of the examples of the experiments that we're running, and it's not something that out of the box. Google doesn't really give you like good ways to test or improve or optimize your campaigns. Even more, like we've seen that Google takes away controls, takes away settings, takes away insights, and it's become even more important to kind of think about like, how can we influence the campaigns besides what you can do in the Google Ads account, right? So that's looking at things like feed optimization and making sure you have like the right products in there. But it's also looking at, okay, how can we maybe like reverse engineer like the Performance Max algorithm? So if this is the case and it is like using the product, the pages that get the most traffic, how can we kind of steer the Performance Max campaign or the Performance Max algorithm towards what we want? Again, it's a very hacky way to do things, but it is, in fact, it gives us like things to do besides just wait for the sales to come in. Because when things are good and you have a Performance Max campaign running and it's bringing in a lot of sales, life is good, especially as an agency or something, right? You're managing and your client is super happy, but then when things go bad and results start tanking, you don't really have a clue on what to do with Performance Max, and I think that's one of the big downsides from it. And the more we can kind of understand on how it works and how we can bring in good results, the better we can also counter things when things aren't going well. So that's basically my view on.
Yeah. And with that case study with the drivers, then is that you're saying there was very particular products in the feed and you were kind of testing a PMAX campaign with just those products. Is that right?
Yeah. To also kind of, because I found it in the experiment. So this is something that I've really gotten more and more into in how to run like good experiments. And it's kind of like deciding, okay, we're going to test it on like a subset of products, and then another portion of the catalog we're not really touching, and they're sort of our control, to really be able to see like, okay, if we send a significant amount of traffic to these 5 products, what difference does that make in terms of impressions, in terms of click-through rate, in terms of sales, in terms of started checkouts, like all those things together.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you so much, Dennis. There's a lot to go over here today. I like that, like we're pulling the levers we can. I appreciate you calling those out. Sounds like, potentially feed only, potentially think about, what assets you're feeding into your campaigns and kind of your campaign structure there. And you could even play with, what products are going in the feeds. Are there other levers that you guys are pulling to kind of do what you can here of taking some control as an advertiser?
Yeah, I would also say like you don't need to decide between Performance Max or standard shopping. Like it can be a mix of the two. So there is, like, as I mentioned, like as soon as you introduce a Performance Max campaign into your account, there's going to be some consequences. So you have to upfront understand like what that's going to do. But I have accounts where we have, for certain products, we have Performance Max campaigns. And then for the products that aren't really performing well in that automated way, we're kind of like pulling them back into a standard shopping campaign with the products that aren't doing that well, and where we want a little bit more control over, maybe over the bids or over like how much they're spending. And standard shopping allows us that extra control. So you basically have the things that are, this is just one example, right? A campaign that's doing very well for Performance Max campaign that's doing well for the bestsellers, and then maybe that's like 5 or 10% of the product catalog, and then we have like another 95% that we're managing like more manually, like trying to making sure that they're being seen by the right people, and yeah, kind of getting the results we need from those other products.
Yeah, that's a good reminder of, Jack and I have looked at our client accounts of think holistically of what's the account performance, not just what's PMAX and non-PMAX, of like it's all going to affect each other now. We're going to be potentially cannibalizing from each other, and then use those multiple feeds as you need to. And if we can do some 80-20 analysis, what are your top performing campaigns? Maybe they get their own feed, they get their own, your top performing products, maybe they get their own campaign. So that's great. Dennis, I really appreciate you coming on. Everybody, I strongly recommend check out storegrowers.com. Under the articles, we've got the ultimate guide to Performance Max campaigns for this year. That's great to see. And then, a free ad checklist, and then some great courses that we definitely recommend and we take at our agency. Dennis, is there anywhere else people should find you?
People can also find me on Twitter. That's Dennis Moons on Twitter. Always fun to post more day-to-day stuff that I see in my accounts and the accounts that we work with. So that's a good place.
All right, Dennis Moons, thank you so much for coming on and sharing what's working in e-commerce.
Thanks for having me. Bye.